hope it's recording. I think it is. Yes, okay, great. So welcome everyone, super nice that you could be here today. It really means a lot to me. And before I start my presentation, I'd like to take a moment to introduce themselves so we know who we're talking to. So maybe let me start. I'm Alex. I'm an international student graduating right now from Hall Larenstein. And with help and facilitation of caring farmers for the last 6 months, I've been working on my thesis project to graduate, but also to investigate the Cathode food system. And I'm hoping to share my results with you very soon. And maybe I will now ask just call names and you can introduce yourselves quickly. So let's start maybe on the left with Rikst from Demeter. Would you like to say a couple of words about yourselves? Just quickly so everyone knows who you are.
Yes, hi, I'm Rikst. I'm working for Demeter and I'm together with Matti. We're responsible for the coordinating certifying of the farmers. So
nice that you could be here. Thank you. And I hope I'm not mispronouncing anyone's names. Joanna? Or yeah, would you like to say a couple of words about yourself, Joanna? No. Okay, then maybe Hanneke, you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Hanneke van Ormond. I'm the coordinator of the Caring Farmers. I've been supervising Alex for the last 6 months, and I'm also doing the Kalfjes bij Koe campaign that we got a SABE subsidy for. Hopefully next week we'll launch a new website with selling points for kalf at koe, zuivel, dairy, and a very informative website for farmers and for consumers about the subject.
All right, thank you. And underneath, who do I see here? Caroline?
Yeah, my name is Caroline Hutink. I'm working as a program manager at Zuivel.nl on animal welfare and animal health.
Super nice that you can be here. And Josephine, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, my name is Josephine Woltman-Elpers. I'm a professor of applied sciences, smart animal welfare management at Van Hall Larenstein, and I'm very happy that I was the Van Hall Larenstein supervisor of Aleksandra.
Thanks. And Henry?
Hello, my name is Henry. I'm a fellow student of Aleksandra. Just graduated now. I'm a master student at the Woer University. Animal science, nutrition, metabolism. So yeah, my focus is on the dairy cattle, feeding and housing. That's how it is. Hello, everyone.
Nice that you could be here. Thank you. And Janneke?
Morning, nice to meet you. I'm Julianna Vandervein. I work on humane livestock farming at the Dutch Ministry of Agriculture, Nature and Food Quality. And I met Aleksandra at a working visit we paid to the Achterhoek, and where she invited us to this presentation. Thank you.
Super, nice that you could be here. And Cindy?
Hi, I'm Cindy. I'm a master student animal sciences at WUR, and I'm performing an internship at the ministry.
Nice, and thank you. And Dan?
Hi, yeah, I am also a fellow student of Aleksandra, and I'm currently also doing my thesis at Van Hall Larenstein.
Okay, and we have still Gerard. Hello? Okay, not responding. And yeah, did I forget someone? Could you please introduce yourself then, if I didn't call your name?
Hi. Okay. Hi, Yvonne de Goos, colleague of Joanneke, policy officer, animal welfare. Hi. And I also met you at the day we had in the Achterhoek. Yeah.
I remember. Super nice that you guys could be here. Okay, anyone else didn't introduce themselves, then please you can unmute your mic and do that now if you want to. If not, I will proceed with my presentation. Okay, let me share my screen. It might take a moment. Could you please tell me if you can see the presentation?
Yep, we can.
Okay, great. So if you could now mute your mics so there is no interference, and I'll start talking. I will take all the questions at the end of this presentation. So yeah, let's start. So really nice again that you could all be here, and this is the result of 6 months of my work of investigating and researching this system. So let us start. So the aim of my research was to, again, explore the calf at food dairy housing system and deduct a common and safe practice. I was supporting myself with the research questions, obviously, and my main research question was how to house calves and cows together for an extended period of time and generate a profitable business model. I know it's a bit of a mouthful, so in simple words is how do farmers do that? Is that profitable? Is that possible? And is that safe? I was supporting myself, obviously, with sub-research questions. There is someone waiting in the lobby. Excuse me. Oh, yes. Okay, great. Let's go back. So I was supporting myself with sub-research questions. I won't be now reading them all, but feel free to skim through them. But basically, they were based on what's the natural behavior of cattle, what the farmers use, how do they make the system feasible for them, and in general, what they pay attention to and how they change their barns to make the system happen. And in order to gain that knowledge, I've been doing a lot of desk research, a lot of quantitative research, interviewing farmers, but I also did a lot of field work. I basically visited almost every farmer I interviewed. And on top of that, I also did behavior observations. So a little bit more in practice. My research was based on experience on 15 farmers, and I know it might not seem like a lot, but in total you have to realize that there are around only 30 of calf at food farmers at the moment, and my aim was to interview all of them. However, it was not always possible. Some of them were not responsive, some of them were not willing to participate, so I'm all the more grateful for the ones that opened their farms for me and allowed me there. So I'm very appreciative. And on top of that, I also based my research a little bit of my experience from Scotland when I did my internship at the also calf at food farm. Then there I met two really nice progressive farmers. And as I've mentioned a little bit, I also did behavior observations to compare the two systems, the conventional system and the calf at food system. And just to put that a little bit in perspective, I mentioned that there are only 30 calf at food farmers out of 16,000 dairy farmers in the Netherlands. So that's really this little funny percentage here. That's the amount of cat at food farmers that we have at the moment. And I feel like this is extremely important for us to discuss that, to talk about it, to share, because as you probably know, the Netherlands is one of the leading dairy producers, exporters, and consumer. So that's why I feel it's essential for us to keep inventing, keep improving the welfare, the biodiversity, the environmental factor of this production. So let us start. So a little bit to put that into perspective, according to my research, the calf at food farmers are in general a little bit more focused on biodiversity and the respect for nature. That's what I noticed, and all of them, 100% of the farmers I spoke to also allowed outdoor grazing access for their animals, either unlimited or year-round, but with some sort of limitation. And also what I've noticed is that they're more local in terms of certain factors, like, for example, feed, slaughter, or selling their products in general, just a little bit, keeping it a little bit more local. So now to put it a little bit more into perspective, in general, the calf at food farm has a lower amount of milking cows comparing to the conventional system. However, the land available to those farmers is usually bigger. And now the reason for that is that some of the farmers, not all, but a lot of them, choose grass as their main source of feed, which means that they don't use really any pelleted feed, any processed feed. So obviously they're going to need a little bit more land to feed all those animals. And how they do that, they also make use of nature areas, so the natuurgebieden, and that solves a little bit the land problem that we have here. And as you can probably see, the average milk production is significantly lower than in the conventional system. And that's also because of the lower intensity of the system. And the second reason is that a lot of those farmers also use dual breeds so that they can later sell the calves for beef as well. So that's a little bit of the reason. Okay, let us move on. A little bit to put in the perspective, who are those calf food farmers? So here on the left, is that everyone's left? I think so. On the map, this is the map created by Caring Farmers as well. You can see how the farmers are distributed across the Netherlands. So they're really spread out. And here, those 3 points that you see in the middle are the 3 main advice that calf food farmers would give to the transitioning farmers. So first of all, you really need the right motivation because, well, you're going to work in a completely different system. So if your motivation is not, missing the word, but pure, if you're not really motivated because you want to work in the system, then it might be really hard because at the beginning, it's a big adjustment. And to do that, to make it work for you smoothly, you need a clear strategy, obviously. And then something that farmers mentioned, one of the most important factors is educating yourself. And I understand that as a milk producer, you might think like, but I already know a lot about cows, and that's definitely true. However, again, you're going to be working in a completely different system. So visiting other farmers, sharing experiences is essential. And here, organizations like Caring Farmers, for example, plays a really beautiful role because they join the farmers together. I myself participated in the Caring Farmers Day, and I thought it was a really beautiful, beautiful day because all the farmers just came together, people from the industry sharing. And yeah, that's a beautiful way to educate. And lastly, you can see the graph here. This is a graph from my report, and it just shows where the farmers choose to sell their products. As you can see, a majority of the farmers sell their products and process them on farm. Some of them choose to also sell it to the milk processor, but that's usually the milk that they have left over from processing. Or on certain occasions, like for example, during Christmas or something, when the milk price is a bit higher, then they choose to sell it. But in general, majority of them sells it themselves and processes themselves. And that's simply because there is at the moment no label, no milk processor that will acknowledge the value of the calf food system and return it back to the farmer. So they choose to do it themselves, mainly. And why can I go further? Oh, okay, it works. All right, then let me walk you through the benefits of this system. So first of all, I've noticed from my own experience that really biodiversity and respect for nature is really the driving force on the system. And you can really see that when you visit most of these farms, that it's a more holistic approach to the cow and to the production system that you would see in a conventional. And also farmers share themselves that really brings them so much joy to see calves and cows together. I literally heard that from almost every farmer I talk to. And overall benefits is obviously more natural behavior expression, the calves grow better, and the fact that cows take care of the calves, so you have to do it less, I guess. And very important, I'm going to touch on that a little bit later, also establish herd hierarchy. But they were just general benefits. Let's now spread them out a little bit more. So I've divided them for the benefits for the cow, calf, and the farmer. So let's start with the cow. Obviously, the cow is now allowed to express the maternal behavior. So it's also natural behavior. And because of that, because of the suckling, there is in general less chance for other infection because simply the residual milk does not stay in the udder. It's just sucked by the calf. And that also creates a more natural herd structure if the generations of cows stay together in a herd. And as you can probably see, the most benefits are for the calf. And the calf is also then allowed to express its natural behavior by suckling, and it's also learning from other herd members, and that's really important because then there is less need for stimulation to encourage calf to graze or to do certain things. The calf learns it from the mother or from other herd members, where to graze, what to graze, where to find water. A lot of farmers also allow free access for the calves to the milking parlor. So that also takes a lot of this learning away because the calf already knows from the very young age what the milking parlor is and what happens there, and that there is nothing scary about that. And establish herd hierarchy. that's a very limiting stress factor if the calves stay together with the mothers, because at some point the calf is going to come back after weaning. It's going to come back to the herd as a heifer, as a milking cow. And then in the conventional system, there is a need to reestablish the whole herd hierarchy. So there's a lot of stress with that. However, if the calf was already introduced to the herd as a little tiny baby, then it already has its space, its share in the herd hierarchy, and there is no need to reestablish that. It's just jumping back into its place. And better calf growth. Well, yeah, that's actually a little bit self-explanatory. The calf is now allowed to drink unlimited amount of milk, which means that we are not limiting it to usually 6 to 8 liters a day, but more to 12, 10, so as much as it wants. So obviously it will grow better. And that's a little bit controversial because according to my calculation, it is much more expensive than to feed it with limited amount of milk in a bucket. However, I feel like, and a lot of farmers share my opinion, that this should be seen as an investment in the future herd, because the health of your cow starts when it's a calf and not when it's a heifer. So that allows it to develop and grow, yeah, as it was intended to. And the ability to play with peers. And I understand also that calves in a conventional system also spend time with other calves. However, from my observation, it shows that they were much more interested in me observing them and in other people than in themselves. And I didn't really observe that much playing behavior as I did in a calf food system. And lastly, the farmer. Obviously, farmers feel like they have less work with the calves. It does not mean that there's nothing to be done with them. It's just you need to do significantly less. Oh, excuse me. We have someone else waiting. All right. Back to the story. Hi, welcome. And yeah, the joy of seeing the calves with the cows. It's definitely the most apparent according to the farmers. But there's not only roses about the system, we also have attention points because we're changing the system that we're working in. So a lot of farmers admit that it's harder right now to have control over colostrum. And that's understandable because you don't really know how much the calf drank. A lot of farmers choose then to milk the colostrum and give it through the bottle to the calf. And that ties up beautifully with the other point that we have, the rewilding and the socialization, because you have to realize that if we're working in a more natural system, then it means that the calf would act more naturally, more similar to how it would in the wild. And that means that it's less used to humans. So socialization through petting, walking through the herd, or giving it some of the milk through the bottle, or maybe only the colostrum, will kind of create this bond. So the calf is just used to the farmer, so it doesn't escape, because, well, the farmers that work in a system when they have milking robots have definitely lower problems with rewilding, because they don't need to handle their animals on daily basis that much as when they have to be milked. Again, weaning strategy and weaning time, because obviously at some point you're going to have to separate them. I mean, in nature, it will take around 6 to 9 months, and that's not financially feasible for domesticated farms. So weaning strategy has to be really thought through, and it can never be abrupt. It's always a process of learning the animal, the new situation. I'll be touching on that a little bit later. And barn adjustments. They don't have to be elaborate. I will also be discussing that in a moment. However, it's just to put that in a perspective that before in a conventional system, we had only grown animals. Now we're going to have small and big animals. So obviously there have to be adjustments made. And that one is very important. The next one, enough resting spaces, because you also have to realize that because we have small and big animals, the small animals will most likely lose the competition for everything else because they're smaller. And because naturally, based on cattle behavior, calves are always the lowest in the hierarchy of the herd, which means that if in a conventional system, I think it's usually around 80% of resting spaces. In this system, it would be recommended to have enough spaces for all the calves, because you want to avoid them lying on the floor, lying in dirty spaces. So that's a really great thing to have. And also, you kind of need to change your way of thinking, because now you're going to be sharing the milk with the calf. This is not the whole milk you produce that you get to sell. So that's very important. And because of that, we kind of put more attention on animal welfare over very high production, as also you've seen that the production in this system is significantly lower. And this system is absolutely not possible if you don't understand and don't have respect for inherent behavior of cattle, because that's ultimately what you want. You want to have more natural system, which means that you have to understand how those animals behave naturally. Okay, and also let's touch a little bit on the calf and cow contact. So what's this extended period of time even mean? So in general, it is usually 3 months, and also some quality systems, like for example, Demeter, they recommend 3 months of fresh milk to the calf. And usually the farmers that I saw that are part of this system, this label, also then allow calves for 3 months with the mother. And that's a really beautiful time, because after this time, the rumen is fully developed, which means that the calf is absolutely not dependent on milk anymore, and it's ready to be independent. Some other farmers also choose to work a little bit more on a feeling, and they would choose the second period between 5 and 10 weeks. And then you really have to know your animals and observe their behaviors and see when the calf is not dependent on the mother this much and it's ready to be weaned. But even if you see that, it's still a process. It still should be done in steps and slowly to avoid unnecessary stress. And also, during my research, I stumbled upon farmers that would keep calves for 2 weeks or a little bit shorter, or even a couple of days. And I personally think that that's too short, and I did not acknowledge those farmers in my research, because I feel like that's a little bit too much of causing stress of separation very early. So I did not acknowledge that. And also, to bring you to your attention that the calf food system does not mean that all calves get to suckle. Most farmers still, mainly due to financial reasons, separate male calves, or even the older females that they're not going to keep on the farms. And that's simply because of allowing all calves to suckle requires your investment of space. Of course, you need much better selling price, and you need to either extend your barn then or reduce the amount of animals you have in your herd. And that's not to discourage other farmers. I feel like even if you're trying with the system, I think that's a really good step in the right direction, and it should be encouraged. Okay, let's move on now to barn modifications. So something I feel like the most iconic for calf food farmers is something that I personally call the kindergarten pen. And that's a pen to which only calves get an access to. And it's based also on natural behavior of cattle, because in wild, the calves would also hang out with the peers and kind of separate themselves at times from the herd. So this allows them to do that. And that creates social bonds around them and rest from the herd, obviously. And then let me walk you through the pictures that you see. So this farmer on the top, he chose to redesign his barn to make this system possible. So that's obviously a bigger investment. And then he can just incorporate this. However, if you don't want to redesign your barn, or you don't have the financial means, that's also perfectly fine, because those spaces can be multi-purpose, or you can utilize the already existing areas. So here in the middle, for example, you see a farmer that's been working in this system for the last 20 years or so. And what he did, he just decided that he's going to fence off the part of his corridor that he did not use anyway. So the space in the barn stayed exactly the same now, and now the calves have the space for themselves. And lastly, here on the bottom is a very nice solution as well. It's a multi-purpose space. So when it's open, it's a pen for calves to rest. It's also a great place to install feeding places or salt licks, so there's less competition with the adult animals. However, if he needs this space to be something else, it becomes a weaning area. And in that case, in that way, he's not losing any space. And lastly, there are also obviously farmers that don't have kindergarten pens, but those farmers then usually allow unlimited access to the outside. So there is, of course, lesser need for that in the barn. Okay, let's look further. So now we have weaning area, very essential area, because weaning is going to have to happen at some point. And again, weaning area must match your weaning strategy. Here in this presentation, I won't be going into details about different weaning strategies. It is available in my report, or you can always ask me questions or reach me after the presentation if you are interested in that. However, as I've mentioned probably already 10 times, it really should never be done abruptly. And this space can also serve more than one purpose. So let me walk you through the pictures that you see. So the first one here on the left, you already saw. And when this space is closed off, the farmer usually puts 2 or 3 calves in here. That's also very important that you don't put a separate calf, because this calf is not used to being separate. So that's additional stress on top of weaning. So it's just better to give it a mate, a buddy, so it's not lonely there. And now the situation changes a little bit, because it's up to a cow to instigate the contact with the calf. It's usually the other way around. It's usually the calf that seeks the udder. Now the cow has to come to the calf, and the calf is allowed to drink through the fence. And it's usually for a week or so. And then the farmer would put another fence on top of that, so that the cow can still visit the calf can sniff it, touch it, but there is no drinking anymore. And after a while, another week or so, the calf is fully weaned. And here in the middle, you see another great solution. So on a daily basis, this is just a part of the barn. However, when the weaning time comes, the farmer again puts 2 or 3 calves into this pen, closes it off in here, and the same principle as on the previous picture happens. Limited contact, steadily limiting the amount of milk and contact with the mother. And lastly, in the middle here, you see these fences. So during the time when nothing really is happening, this is just an open space and everyone's using it, calves, cows. However, it can double as a weaning area when the weaning time is coming, and then the calves can still see the mother, see the herd. Or it can also be a calving area, because, well, those two rarely happen at the same time. So as you can see, you really don't need that much space to make the system happen. It's more about strategically placing fences and steadily limiting contact with the mother. And lastly, about the changes, I wanted to share some of the nice solutions that I saw here and there. So first of all, here, I hope it's nicely visible. This farmer, for example, chose to add a layer of fencing, so that, but only on the outer layer, on the outer fence of the house pastures, so that the calves cannot escape from the field to the street or anything. But he, for example, said that he didn't feel the need to fence the middle pastures, because, as he said, the calves come back to the mother anyway. Or here, for example, the picture the most to the right, you see the water and feed sources that are lower. So this farmer didn't want to put it especially in the pen. He just chose to lower all the water sources and all the available in his barn. And that's per se also not a problem if there is enough of them, because, well, the cows don't mind eating and drinking from the ground. That's what they're used to, so it doesn't have to be higher for them. And in the middle, that's a Scottish solution. I found it very interesting. It's the lying spaces. So those space dividers are soft and bouncy. They can move sideways and up and down, and that allows cows and cows to sleep together without the calf being crushed into the metal balls. And also this little space here fits a calf when it's like around up to 2 weeks old, so it can also sleep and crawl in here next to the mother. All right, so that's about the changes. Now, let me just touch on the economical feasibility of the system. So bluntly, yes, it is economically feasible and safe to keep cows and cows together if you acknowledge the factors that I've been just mentioning. And also, to make this system really flourish and thrive, the asking price, it's usually higher for dairy and milk products to those farmers. And they usually then sell their produce on the farm. And the essential part of making the system successful is educating consumers and the transparency of the system. And I feel like maybe creating a quality label would encourage a little bit more farmers to transition and make it easier. All right, so we are at the end of the first part of my presentation. And thank you so much for your attention. If there are any questions right now, I will be happy to take them. I will stop sharing for a second so I can see you guys. And if there are questions right now, yeah, you're free to ask them now. Oh, yes,
Yeah.
Caroline?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay, go for it. You spoke first, so ask your question, Henry.
That was not a question, it was rather a point, I guess. You mentioned a couple of times about that there is no label showing the extra value of the milk, and that's why farmers have to add the value by themselves. Just yesterday, I had a conversation with the organization named Friends of the Earth, and those guys, quite a big organization, actually providing such labels for different companies, and I think that the idea can perfectly fit to them. If you're going to pitch this idea to them, probably they will definitely find some sort of label for that as well, because it's totally their area of expertise.
Oh,
So,
that's very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like there are a couple of companies, like for example, Dierenbescherming, that are working on incorporating that, but there is no fixed label at this moment. But yes, it's really great that the companies are working towards including that as part of the system. All right, I see that Caroline had a question as well. See your hand is raised.
Yes, yeah, first of all, thank you very much for your very interesting presentation so far. And I wonder if you also asked about data on health, so calf health, like mortality data, disease incidents, things like that.
Yes, I did. And I did not analyze it in details. I was just asking farmers questions if they see the difference. And what they say is they actually, if your health management and hygiene management is on point before you transition, then the calves really thrive in this system. They are healthier, more robust, and more daring. So yeah, but because you have to acknowledge, of course, that they don't have immunity when they're born, so they are more susceptible to diseases. So you have to take that into account. But if you do, then there is no problems. They don't notice bigger mortality or outbreaks or any sort of connected health problems. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I would be interested in more precise data, Aleksandra, but I understand that it's not the scope of your research maybe, but like lung problems, things like that.
Oh yeah, I did not really research that in depth. I was just asking farmers if they like notice more health problems, but that's definitely a very interesting topic to follow up afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. I see Josephine has a question.
Yeah, could you elaborate on what supermarkets could do to stimulate the purchase or the of consumers to buy these kind of products, or what? So one side on the consumer side, but also on the other hand, how should they facilitate farmers, the caring farmers?
That's actually a good question. I was gonna mention that as part of the discussion later, but I can share my opinion right now, no problem. So I definitely think that the supermarkets have a very privileged position in having a direct contact with consumer. So they could be responsible, also take the part of the responsibility for the system to share the way of production, how it was produced, and why this price is higher. Because obviously, if you see a milk that's, let's say, cost €1 and then a milk that costs €3 for a liter, a lot of consumers, without knowing the backstory, would reach for the cheaper one, most likely. So I feel like this should be part of the responsibility of supermarkets also, or retailers in general, to share this value. I hope that answers your question. I think we can also discuss it a little bit later in the discussion.
Yes, definitely, yes. So thank you very much. Yeah.
Yes. And Henry, you had a question?
Yeah, I had a question on top of the one about asked by Caroline about the health. I also thought about Johan's disease, etc. But my question was more about behavior aspects. So to speak, what do you think will happen in the future with those animals? How manageable they're going to be in the milking parlor, etc. Because what I understand, they might be, in my opinion, they can be a little bit more wild after lacking the access in the very early age to the human, to the farmer. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think that, yes, it is possible that they might be a bit wilder, but that's a little bit on a farmer to socialize with the animals. And I should probably also mention that a lot of those farms are also zorgboerderijen. So the farms that allow other people to enter and be among the animals. And that usually solves the problem, because ultimately you don't want your cow to be your pet. You just want it to be manageable. So if you learn the calves what the milking parlor is and you allow them the free access with the mother, then there usually is no problem, because they already know what's happening and why they're there, and that nothing scary happens to them. So yes.
All right.
And Cindy, you had a question as well?
Yeah, I was wondering, do cows have horns in these systems due to the hierarchy?
Well, that depends. A lot of farmers do keep the horns, and then you obviously have to have a little bit more space and be careful about that. But some of the farmers also choose for pole breeds, so breed the cows without horns. But in general, because a lot of those farmers are also organic farms or some sort of part of a different label, they usually don't dehorn their animals.
Okay, yeah, interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. And Hanneke?
I've got a question on the housing, the barn adjustments. What I've seen so far in your presentation is that if the farmers only keep the female calves with the moms, they actually don't need a lot of expensive barn adjustments. But if they choose to keep all their calves, even the bull calves, that's only then it will become more expensive, because then they really need more space. Is that the correct conclusion?
Yes, like you definitely also have to take into account that it will be more expensive to feed that calf, because you give it more milk for a longer period of time. But in terms of space and investment of that, you don't really need much more space. You just have to make sure that there is enough resting space, and then the calves have their own areas where they can do their own thing. And then it's usually fine. Only after you decide to keep all the calves together, then yes, you either should have less animals or less adult animals, or have a barn extension, and that's usually then a bigger investment and might probably need some subsidies or other source of financial income.
So most farmers could start calf-fed food with the female calves that will stay on to be milking cows without a lot of big investments.
Yes, that's my conclusion for sure. Okay, I see there was one more question. Janja, you had a question? Hello? Joanna, you had a question? Or am I totally mispronouncing your name, and then I'm really sorry?
It's Yvonne.
Oh yeah, I'm so sorry.
Did you say Yvonne?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yes, I mentioned.
Well, I have a question relating to the question that Caroline asked. Really interested in mortality and health problems. But in relation to that and the bar adjustments for the kindergarten, is there also, what I saw in the pictures, it's just an area where they can walk into without the cows. But is there also an adjustment for preventing draft and that kind of things? The calves have another preferable temperature than the cows, I can imagine. They maybe need some more protection to
yes,
be
that's for sure. So
healthy.
That's usually the deep litter. So usually farms then would choose for straw, so there is a bigger or better isolation from the ground, and that's usually all the things that I really saw. They really didn't. You have to also make sure that it's a sealed area, so there is no wind coming up, but they weren't really that much specific on that. It's more that the flooring has to be isolated, and then they can easily sleep on it and it's warm for them. And that's usually enough, because we also don't have that severe winters in the Netherlands that is that much out of the comfort zone of the calf.
Thank you. And yeah, maybe it's a really big question, but can you give an advice if you are a farmer and you want to keep the calf with the cow? Do you have one advice, or is it I go in details. Yes, of course. So I go in details in my report, but in general, as I've mentioned, first you have to make sure that your hygiene and health management are on point, and then definitely what's your strategy? What would you like to do? How would you like to do it? And definitely seek advice of other farmers that are already doing it. Visit the farms, see what works for them, and take what you think would work for your farm, because
if there is something I can definitely say about all the farms I visit is that each was really unique and each was different. So you just have to pick the things that you think will work for you. All right, I think there was one more question from the ladies from Demeter, so maybe you could ask it and we're gonna move on because I see that we are already a little bit, I said it would be an hour and we're already almost 15 minutes in. Yes.
I was curious because you told that if a farmer decides to keep all the calves, also the males and the females that will not be part of the herd later on, that it's a much bigger investment. And I was wondering if you came across any farmers who were also keeping the male calves and with the cow.
Yes, so at this moment I came across 2 farmers that were doing that. And one of them was in a process of transitioning, and he shared with me that he's gonna need to have an extended barn because it's getting very crowded in there. And the other farmer just mentioned that he kind of calculated how much animals he can fit in his barn safely. And also, to put it out there, he allows an unlimited access to the outside. So it's a little bit more spread, obviously. But then he just told me that, okay, I've calculated that. And for example, I've noticed that I should have 2 adult animals less to make it safe for every cattle. So he didn't really extend his barn. He chose to reduce. And then on top of that, he's selling his products on the farm so he can establish the price that will fit his needs to make that possible for his farm. I hope that answers the question.
I have a question as well.
Yes.
I was wondering about the floors, because the organic farm where I'm milking, she says that the gaps in the floor are too wide and that the calves will like fall down. Is there also a solution for?
Well, yes, simply a lot of farmers then choose for a deep litter flooring because it's obviously safer. However, I also came across a farmer that had a slanted floor and he just chose to close off this part of the barn for the calves. So he picked a part of the barn without this type of flooring, turned it into a deep litter flooring, and then didn't allow the access for the calves. So there is basically a push door that only a cow could push to walk through, so the calf cannot access it. And that was also part of the solution. Because yes, that's a very good point, that if you have a slanted floor, you have to really make sure that, yeah, the hooves are big enough not to fit in the gap.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. All right, I think we can move on to the discussion part of my presentation. I'm going to reshare my presentation again. So if you could tell me if you can see it. Yes, I hope yes. And now I would like you guys to talk a little bit and share your opinion. What do you think about this system? Taking into account the things I've mentioned, I put them out there, but maybe there are also things that I did not mention and you think like are important also about the system, or something from your expertise that comes to mind. So I don't really see you now. Oh, I see you now, but then you cannot see me. So if you can just unmute your mic and speak, but then make sure that we don't interrupt each other. So if there's something to share, please share it now. If not, I'll keep talking. Yes. All right. So if you don't want to share your opinions, maybe I will start with sharing mine. So I obviously think that this is a better way of producing dairy, or more ethical way in which we allow animals to be animals, and we see them a little bit more like, yeah, a mother with a job rather than just a producing machine. And I think that's a beautiful change. And I also understand that in order to sustain the needs, or really not the needs, but the production that we have right now, it might not be the most suitable system at the moment, but I hope that together we can think of a solution. So if there is something you guys have to add. Anyone? No?
Yeah,
Okay.
Aleksandra?
Yes?
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. I think that this system, how would I say that? It means kind of a transition in thinking about how cows are held or are managed by the consumer, and this needs to be brought much more under attention of consumers. Because if I take a look around my friends who do not have any farmer background or any background with animals, they even don't know how cows are used now. So I think, and when sometimes I talk to researchers, can be scientific or in practice, and they are doing research, but still in the system as it is now. So I am very interested, not only in your opinion, but also in the opinion of the others who are here, how you think we can accelerate this, especially in the difficult times that the farmers are in now. Yeah. So I think that are my thoughts.
If I can answer to that, this is exactly what we're doing. We started this campaign a few months ago. kalfjesbijdekoe.nl, that is the website, which will be completely changed and updated next week, and we will be that will be twofold. One is to help farmers start this system. We started it with 2 farmers, but now we already have a group of 10 very experienced farmers sharing their experience, and 10 new farmers who are willing to learn and who are just starting. And hopefully that group will grow. And of each farmer, we will share their stories through social media and media. And then on top of that, we will start educating consumers through Caring Farmer social media channels, but also many of the animal welfare NGOs have already said that they will help sharing and share our videos to all their consumers, who are which in total that's reaching up to 1 million. So we are working on that, but because I completely agree, people should know what they're consuming and how it's produced.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you, Hanneke.
And together with the dierenbescherming, the dierenbescherming wants to make a keurmerk, about the 3-star label, and then separate from the normal 3-star label. So just one for cow-fed food. So every farmer, even if they're not part of the 3-stars label, they can, if they keep cow-fed food, it will be separate. Unfortunately, that will still take another year or so before that is finished. So in the meantime, we're gonna help farmers who are already doing it with selling their products by making a map with selling points. So wherever, and also online selling points, so that even if you are in Friesland, you can buy the cheese of Kalf Koet farmers in Brabant. So it will be available to everybody.
That's a really beautiful initiative, I think, because yes, it would be beautiful to get those products available to you in a supermarket, but I don't think we're there yet. So yeah, just make it a little bit more approachable. I think it's really a great start.
The only thing we are very sad about, because we asked for the subsidies and we only got half of the money, because all the money that we asked to pay the farmers for their learning time and for their teaching time, we did not get. So it's the farmers have to invest themselves. Also the 10 farmers with a lot of experience, which are invaluable in this project, we unfortunately cannot pay them for their teaching time.
Yeah, that's a little bit sad here, right? Because that's really an essential part, because I know that we're still producing dairy and it doesn't change, but it's a completely different system and different adjustments. All right, but let's then move on to, why can I move on? Excuse me. Okay. Okay. Here you can see 2 different systems. And my goal is here not to play on your emotions or anything, but I'm really looking for professional opinions, or just what you think it's better and why. And again, if you guys are shy to start, I can also start sharing my opinion. So I think it's kind of obvious which I think is better. But why? Just because I look at the pictures of cows in the meadows and cows, and I just see animals in their natural habitat that we profit from, but not overexploit and don't lock them up in a system to fit our needs. And that's basically what it is to me. And I'm very curious to know what your opinions are.
All right, maybe I can share my opinion here. So what I see, and again, what I like to see is the right picture, because I see them on a more natural background, so to speak. It looks healthy and nice for young animals to develop this way. But again, from the farmer perspective, I will always wonder about how easy it will be to manage and monitor my animals, to manage the disease, to manage the nutrition, and how they grow, to monitor everything. So that would be my question. But again, we're all used to one system, and we're not used to another one just yet. And that would be my point again. So it is very nice to educate in this system the consumers, but I think, and I believe in this situation, if we, it will be even easier to educate the consumers rather than farmers, because if you like this system to be very popular in the sector, you really need to give all the numbers to the sector, because a lot of farmers, they will look exactly into that point: the workload, the management, the control, the monitoring, etc. So it could be that the consumers will be very much interested, because yeah, they will follow the opinion. But again, the sector will keep its opinion, because the sector is all about efficiency and indeed the control, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
Yes, you're definitely right. That's why I wanted to ask those questions, so we can all share. But if there's something else that anyone wants to add about this slide, if not, then... Oh,
yeah,
yes,
Aleksandra, I would like to, of course, I like the right picture much more, because I think a bond between a young animal, a baby, and a mother animal, whether it is a cow or not, you should never separate them in the beginning. It can never be good for health or welfare. But maybe if you look from the perspective of a farmer, this system in between, that you still keep the calf at the cow, as you did research on, but that we can also learn from other sectors. For example, I am very, I have a passion for horses. I have my own horses here. I'm sitting outside, so also next to them. They also live in freedom, but I also know from private stables they do the same, and they also need to manage the health of each individual horse and also the smaller horses. You can maybe think about systems like the HIT active stable. I don't say you need to introduce it, but maybe there are some systems that are in between, where you still keep the calf at the cow, which are of course more expensive, but we should do research on it. I also do not know the answer, but we need to start somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of hoping that, because there's really not much research done on this system. Like, believe me, I've checked. I spent months researching internet for that. And all of the research are done in the conventional system. So I'm kind of hoping that with bringing you all here together, that I'm just maybe going to steer something to make it go further and keep researching and keep, like, because obviously I also had the scope of my research. So I did not check everything, but all of those ideas are valuable. And yes, I think they're important to discuss and go further. And definitely we should do much more research, because also, like, as I said, those farms, the cathode food farms, are usually smaller than the conventional farms in terms of milking of the milk herd size. So I guess would also be easier to keep control and monitor all the animals if you have basically the half of what you had in a conventional system. So I think that's also a factor. If you had less animals to manage, that you can manage them better. That's what I think in this more, wild system, so to speak. All right.
Aleksandra, can I add very quickly something? So then, then we used to work in Iran as an advisor on a big scale farm. They exactly did the same, but it was sheep. So they kept the young stock together. Their lambs will be kept with the mother, but they have very bad situation with disease control there. So what we decided to do is that on individual level after lambing, and then in this case after calving, you would gather the information on the mother, the health, the other condition, etc. And that's how you can balance out the unequal situation. So you take the calves from the healthy mother and you will keep them together. But if you see the cow will not provide sufficient milk, or she has some condition like a Johan's disease, for example, you will take those calves and you will raise them in alternative system, also to speak in the standard system. You will control the quality of the milk, you will pasteurize, you will make sure that the calf will get enough milk, because in this system, again, just imagine there are a couple of calves, let's say 2 calves, and not enough milk, for example, because the udder is compromised of this cow, but they will not drink from another cow, for example, so that should be taken into account. So you can assess the animals, and then you can divide the healthy group and the group which will require support from a human to the bigger extent, maybe.
Yeah, that's also a very great solution, because obviously we don't want to force this system above everything else. We want healthy animals. So if that's the best solution according to the farmer, because the mother cannot provide or is sick or whatever, then I think that's a great solution. To try that as well. And I think like also the system that you've mentioned, so kind of half-half, it also gives a great opportunity to do more research, to do more observations on how those animals are performing in both systems. So
yes, yes, indeed. And in behavior, not every cow is a good mother, so to speak, especially in modern breeds. So not all of them will take care about the youngsters, so to speak. That's also true sometimes.
And that's actually a very good point, because like if you especially want to transition from the conventional system to the calf food system, and especially the Scottish farmers were sharing with me that the animals got a little bit crazy. They didn't know what's happening, because for the couple of years that they were in the system they were producing, they had their calves taken away. And now suddenly this calf is here and the cow is standing there like, okay, what am I supposed to do with it? So it's also a learning process for the animal as well. So you should also acknowledge that. And especially the first year, that's why I said the motivation is very important, because the first years might be really difficult, might be challenging. So again, as Hanneke said, it's very essential that we keep educating also farmers, educate farmers about that, because they have the first hand, the best experience. And I can do research all I want, but they spend the time with the animals on a daily basis, so they will definitely know best.
Yeah, good point.
All right. Anyone else has something to add about that? Or can we move further so I don't keep you? Yeah, okay.
I prefer the right picture because it's taken on our farm.
Yes, it is.
But I would show and represent this whole system of our farm. And that's very important, because the whole system on our farm brings the lowest costs to do it. And that's where farmers have to be going to. No more stables. Take the nature. All the seasons brings you the lowest costs. Our cows are calving in springtime, so they don't need any barns. They are going outside immediately, and they're coming inside in autumn, and then they are big enough to become in the stable. So I will prefer show the practice and let's see it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's also a little bit what I said, that I've noticed really that those farms, and especially your farm, is a really great example of that, of just tuning in with the nature and letting it do its thing, because we've been changing the system, the conventional system, so much that it really has not much to do with nature anymore. And I feel like that's maybe a little bit of an alternative opinion, but nature knows what it's doing. So we just have to listen and allow it to do it, I feel like.
The veterinarian has come last year, the last couple of years, twice a year, once to make the calves of the bull calves to castrate, and the second time she came was for the administration. So this system gives you so much power for health. We didn't have any diseases at all.
That's really great thing to share also, that, because that's a very big concern in the conventional world, that, or farming world, that there is going to be more diseases, and that's literally one of the myths that's been repeating to me a lot. And I feel like, yeah, your farm and also other farms that I visit are the breeding example that that's not true. And it's really nice that we can share that here. All right. Anyone else? Something to add? Oh, I see someone's popping into my window, so yes. Yes, do you guys have anything else to add, or can we move on to the next slide? Okay, I'm gonna take it as that we can move on. So here I'd like to, we talked a little bit about it again, but how do we make it more approachable for farmers then? Because we are here all from more or less from the industry, and everyone has a different opinion, everyone has a different point of view. And what do you think? Just because we are a little bit over time and I don't want to keep you longer than I said I would. So, but maybe briefly we can discuss what would be the role of the quality label and the processors and retailers, like we talked a little bit with Josephine before. Or should there be a separate production chain for those farmers? Because like, as we also saw, they are really spread out across the Netherlands. So how do we do that? And the most important for me personally would be how we return the value back to the farmer, because how do we expect them to elevate the welfare and do everything that's more expensive without getting the value back to them? So what do you guys think? Does anyone has something to share about that?
There's a question in the chat.
Sorry.
If there's a question in the chat. I don't know if you saw it.
Oh no, I don't see it. But thank you. Thank you. I will check it. So you need a spring calving herd. That was okay. That was the question that was asked. I wouldn't say that you need it, but I would say that it definitely, yeah, like Gerard just shared, it's definitely easier to do, because then again, if you let all your animals be outside, then you don't need to really do much with your barn, for example. And then you also tuning in a little bit more with the nature itself and how it would work in the nature. So there is less interference from your side. I hope I'm explaining it well. Maybe someone else has something else to add about this question, or maybe about what you see in front of you. Yeah.
I think I can add to that breeding point that was just mentioned with the seasonal breeding. And I think it might be important that the seasonal breeding will be added to the system, although it's not a necessity. But like Gerhard said, it just allows you to give the animals more space when they need more space. So in the time when they don't need to be separated, so when they are together, they can be outside and inside at the same time if necessary, and they just have more space. And when it's getting colder and the fields are not getting muddy and everything, you can separate the animals more and have maybe already a separate barn for the young stock, and have your milking parlor and your milking barn aside. So this, you can have more animals in the same amount of space if you use seasonal breeding. Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah. That's a really good point as well. Yeah, if you use the seasonal breeding, definitely. Does anyone else have something else to add, or can we move on to the last slide so I don't keep you guys much longer?
I will quickly add that, I think we need protocols there. The protocols, like uniform protocols for every farm. Yep.
Yeah, but that's again very hard to do because of the uniqueness of every farm. That's why, like, for example, like Hanneke also mentioned, it probably won't be ready until the next year, because you really have to take so many factors into account. But it's beautiful that people try to do that, and I hope I can contribute to that with my research, or maybe in the future with my future employment possibilities, that I can just also contribute, because I'm very passionate about what I'm doing right now. And yeah, with that said, let's move on to the last slide. And here's a little bit similar. So how do we convince farmers to transition? And what's the role of consumer awareness and education and the transparency of the whole system? Because I personally think that animal products in general, regardless if it's dairy or meat, should be more expensive. And that this value should not go back to the processors, to supermarkets, but to the producers themselves. And that's what I strongly believe in. And I'm very curious to know what your opinion are, guys. Yeah, something to add?
Well, the most important is let the practice farmers who are doing it for many years, let them show and tell about it. That's the most invited way of to make a transition.
I definitely agree. Yeah.
And also add to that that we can also educate now the young people at MBO, but also HBO and university about the system and hear the stories from practice, because they are the multipliers at the end, and the young professionals.
That's also a very good point, indeed. Indeed. So yeah, I would just like to kind of close off this. I feel like it's just very important to bring awareness about how the berry is produced and which scale and why it should cost as much as the Kalf food, cheese or milk costs and why. And I think it's beautifully shown, especially on the farms, that you can go there and buy products, because those farmers, I mean, all the farmers I spoke to, they basically opened their homes, their farms to me and showed everything. And you've seen a very big, like, genuineness behind that they have nothing to hide and that they will show you how they do it because they believe what they're doing is right. And I really love that. And yeah, thanks so much for everyone that participated and shared their opinion today. And it really meant a lot to me that you guys could be here. And if there's still something that you feel like maybe after this presentation you would like to add, then here's my email address. It's my personal email address. You probably also have my school email address, but probably after September I won't be using it anymore because I'll be graduating, hopefully. So feel free to reach me or reach from Caring Farmers also as well. And yeah, let's share it. Let's spread it.
I think first Hanneke, and then I would like to close as supervisor.
Yes, yes. Just stop sharing.
I think the whole questions and answers are very interesting. Also, maybe for other people to see. If there's nobody who has an objection, could we put the whole presentation, including the questions, on our website? Is there any objections?
No objection from my point, personally.
Okay.
Thanks. Great. Then we'll do that.
Yeah. Then before everybody leaves, I would like to thank Aleksandra for having done an excellent, I think, project, but also presentation and discussion. And I think it is great that we could keep in touch because that's important, I think, for motivation of this system. So thank you very much, Aleksandra. To be officially, Hanneke and I will meet online directly after this, and then I will contact you by Teams, Aleksandra.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for this, a really very good project. So
thank you. And yeah, from my side, thanks again for everyone who could be here today. It really meant a lot. And yeah, so if there's nothing else to add, then I guess I already kept you a bit longer than I said I would. So yeah, thanks again. And I hope to stay in touch one way or another. Yes, per question. Yes, my paper is not 100% finished yet. I still have to do some editing, so like grammar check and all of that. So after that is finished, I think there will be no problem with sharing it.
okay, thank you. Is it okay, Hanneke, that we meet in the other at 11:15? Yeah. Okay.
All right. Then I will leave my Teams open so you can call me when you are ready. All right.
Great.
Thanks again for everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mm.